I ended things with my unfaithful wife after she called me a loser and had fun with a guy I knew well. I'm 57 years old. I've been married to the woman who was the love of my life for 26 years. Let's call her Lucy. We were college friends and knew each other for a decade before getting married. During those 10 years, we spent 2 years as friends, a year of me pursuing her, and the remaining 7 years dating. There were even a few years of long distance. In those 7 years, we lived in different cities for work reasons, and our relationship endured the challenge. Lucy was more than just my wife and the mother of my children. She was also my closest friend since college. She understood me like no one else, which is why her betrayal really hurt me. About a week ago, Lucy and I went to our college reunion. Our college holds a reunion every year for the classes that graduated 35 years ago. It's a big event with singers and celebrities performing. Alumni look forward to it every year. This year it was our class's turn. We and our fellow classmates were excited to reconnect and see how we had all changed over the years. Lucy and I were particularly thrilled because we were one of the few college couples who had married and stayed together for so long. We walked into the event eager to show off our strong relationship. Little did I know that I was walking into a trap of my own making. We were having a wonderful time reconnecting with some of our dearest friends after felt like the best moments of our lives. That is, until someone approached us. We'll call him Rick. Rick had always been an admirer of Lucy. Everyone in our class was aware of his deep affection for her. Lucy was one of the brightest students in our class. Like any other attractive woman, she had her share of admirers in college. I was one of them too. However, Rick was not the type to just flirt, take a chance, and move on if the girl wasn't interested. He was the persistent type. He pursued Lucy throughout college and beyond. He didn't give up, even though he knew she was dating and in love with me. I've always been a secure partner and didn't let his advances affect our relationship. Rick, along with everyone else, knew that Lucy was way out of his league, but he never stopped trying. I remember when Rick found out that Lucy had married me, he actually texted me and said that Lucy had made a mistake. He also said he hoped I would care for her as much as he would have. Lucy and I simply laughed at his childishness and romantic notions. We hadn't heard from him or spoken to him since that day until the day of the reunion. We thought he would have moved on by now, considering it had been 35 years since college and 26 years since our marriage. However, to our surprise, he was still fixated on Lucy. He greeted all of us with hugs. I gave him a hug, but Lucy shook hands with him because his intense gaze made her uncomfortable. He sat across from Lucy and gave her an odd and intense stare, which didn't go unnoticed by anyone. I couldn't help but ask if he had brought his family to the reunion party. He said he was single and mentioned that he had been briefly married in his 40s but had gotten divorced. I expressed my sympathy, saying, "I'm sorry to hear that." He responded dramatically, "Well, you should be sorry. You stole my love," followed by a burst of hysterical laughter. If I were in my 30s, I might have considered physically confronting him, but as we're approaching our 60s, such things no longer hold much importance. Besides, Rick isn't the intimidating type. He's more of a sleazy loudmouth guy. You wouldn't pick him for sports even though everyone heard his joke. No one responded, and you could feel we were all getting a bit uncomfortable, so we mostly brushed it off. However, Lucy became noticeably quiet. Nancy and I took Lucy aside. We tried to lift her spirits and encourage her to forget about the troublemaker and enjoy the rest of the evening. We knew that Lucy tends to overthink things, so we both attempted to ease her mind. Suddenly, Rick approached us out of the blue. I suspect he had been keeping an eye on us all along. To our surprise, he did. He apologized, saying he hadn't meant to upset her. He said he wanted to make her happy. He said that despite the separation and the effects of aging on her appearance, she still had an admirer. I couldn't tolerate his cheesy words, so I told him to back off. He expressed genuine regret about causing discomfort. Lucy asked him to leave us alone, but he said he wanted to stay so we could enjoy the last gathering of our lives. Those words made I think it was time to put this behind us and move forward. That night was undoubtedly the final occasion for us to meet our old friends and classmates, so there was no point in dwelling on the past. Lucy hugged him and urged him to move on from her and let it go. We all hugged and headed to the dance floor to have fun at the party. Others joined us, and it turned into an enjoyable time. Later on, I noticed Nancy and Lucy talking to Rick, who was standing beside them. He was chatting and dancing in a funny way. I was happy that this issue seemed to be resolved and we could look back on it in a positive light. I kept an eye on them to ensure Lucy was okay. Rick was whispering something in her ear and she smiled and nodded at him. I assumed it wasn't anything inappropriate, or else Lucy would have reacted differently. This gave me the green light to relax and enjoy myself with others. I noticed that Lucy and Nancy were nowhere to be seen. At first, I didn't think much of it because we were all mingling separately. I was catching up with other friends on my own. However, when they didn't reappear after some time, I began searching for them. I tried to call them first, but they didn't answer. I realized the loud music might be drowning out the sound of their phones ringing. After roughly 30 minutes, I gave up and went to look for them. Lucy came back, but she seemed different. She looked the same, but I had this feeling that she was a different person. She was really quiet and kept telling me to leave. Nancy came back soon after, but Lucy and Nancy didn't say a word all night. I figured they'd argued about something because they didn't look at each other. I asked Lucy why she seemed so annoyed and I tried to persuade her to leave early, but she remained silent. On the way back, which took over an hour, Lucy remained silent. I kept asking if she was okay and she said she was tired and needed rest. I was uneasy because Lucy is usually the one with energy and seeing her upset without knowing the reason worried me. I asked if it had anything to do with Nancy. I asked Nancy if she was okay, but she just said no and didn't explain why. I figured she was just tired, so I left her alone when we got home. Most of our friends were posting happy pictures from the party and chatting on social media about how excited they were to see everyone again. Some of them were even saying that it might be the last time they all got together like this. Lucy went to bed with her eyes closed. I guess she wanted me to think she was asleep. Why do I say it was almost 2 a.m.? When I went to bed, I was exhausted. I fell asleep as soon as I hit the mattress. I'm not sure how long I had been asleep when Lucy woke me up. She was in tears, resting her head on my chest. I held her close and asked if she was feeling emotional about reuniting with her old friends, but she didn't respond. She kept crying. I held her tight to show I was there for her, even though she wasn't sharing what was going on. I let her cry it out until she was done. Then she told me something that took me by surprise. She said she'd cheated on me with Rick. I was at a loss for words and unable to ask her anything further. I was frozen in shock. My mind was racing with thoughts about what might have transpired the last time I saw Lucy. She was dancing with Rick and Nancy, along with others. Then, the three of them disappeared for about an hour. When Lucy returned, she wore a gloomy expression. She said she had to leave the party. She said Nancy knew what was going on, but Nancy was really mad at Lucy. I was still too shocked to speak, so as she saw I was stunned, she started explaining everything herself. She said that while they were dancing, he apologized for the embarrassment he'd caused her, especially after she'd rejected his advances numerous times. He showered her with praise, claiming that in all his travels around the world, he'd never encountered a woman as extraordinary as her. Lucy explained that she'd begun to believe his compliments. He seemed sincere, so she went for a walk with him. She'd initially said no, but he kept asking. He said it would be their last encounter, and she deserved to know his true feelings. She wanted to hear what he had to say, so she agreed to go for a walk on the college lawn. Seeking some peace and quiet on the lawn, Rick openly expressed his feelings, proclaiming his lifelong love for her and describing her as the most incredible woman on earth. She recounted various things he said, but the essence was the same. Lucy admitted that she was intoxicated and foolishly succumbed to his words. He started holding her hand while they walked, and in that moment, Lucy felt an immense weight lift off her shoulders, making her feel strangely comfortable. I won't get into the nitty-gritty of what she told me about what happened, but she told me everything, absolutely everything. She even said her guilty conscience kicked in when they were in the middle of it and she pushed him away. My mind was in a daze and my body felt numb. She nudged me seeking some reaction, but I remained silent. I asked her to give me a moment, and she continued crying and apologizing. Eventually, I told her to go. She said she needed to sleep and that we'd discuss the matter in the morning. She held on to me tightly, expressing her fear of losing me. I simply closed my eyes and lay there, replaying the situation in my mind. I was reflecting on the events until I distinctly recalled something that struck me as odd. Rick gave me a strange after Lucy came back from their makeout session. Rick gave me a strange grin. I didn't think much of it at the time, but I guess it was his triumphant smile, like he'd finally won her over. I felt a surge of anger and disgust. I was too restless I couldn't bear to be around her anymore. She'd been crying for hours and I could see she was exhausted. I quietly slipped out of bed, gathered my laptop, wallet, and other essentials into a backpack, and left our home. I loved that woman. We'd been married for 26 years, and I couldn't imagine a life without her. We had a family and kids, but I just couldn't stay. I knew her well, and if I'd waited until morning, she'd probably have talked me out of leaving. So I checked into a hotel and blocked her number and social media accounts. It was already sunrise by the time I managed to fall asleep around 8. I think it was around 9 o'clock or 10 a.m. My phone was ringing nonstop with calls from my kids. Lucy and I have 2 kids, a 24-year-old son and a 21-year-old daughter. My older daughter is in college and lives on the same campus as my younger daughter. After reading numerous stories, I realize I made a hasty decision to ghost Lucy that very night. I should have planned more carefully for my next steps to maintain control of the situation. I've come across stories where people pretended to act normally with their cheating partner while secretly plotting revenge and eventually exposing them. The affair. In my case, I couldn't have acted normally with Lucy. She was not only my spouse but also my closest friend and my better half in every sense. Even if I had attempted to deceive her, she would have seen through it immediately. I couldn't bear to pretend in front of her. The idea of Lucy cheating on me was the last thing I ever expected. I had never devised a plan for how to handle such a situation. I had no plan for how to handle the situation when my kids called. I needed to speak to one of them before they went to the police to report me missing. I called my son, who was usually more composed and mature than my daughter. I told him that there was no gentle way to break the news other than to tell him that his mother had cheated on me the previous night with her former lover, admirer, stalker, whatever you want to call him. I told him I needed some time to process everything. He was taken aback to hear that his own mother had committed such an act. Additionally, he knew that we had a strong, loving family and that we had always maintained a great relationship. Now she had shattered that image. My children, as well as our relatives and friends, had always admired our closeness. He was proud of our family and couldn't believe his mother would do such a thing. He kept asking for details and wanted everything explained in order. I knew that going over all the details would be too much for him right now. I said it was just a joke, but his mom had confessed her infidelity to me. He's 24 and has already experienced heartbreak, but I understand that this situation is really taking a toll on him in a different way. I asked him to promise not to tell anyone about it until I did. I sent a text to my daughter explaining that I was stressed about work and personal issues and would be out of town for some time, which put an end to the phone calls. So, the situation was as follows. While my daughter believed I was away on business, both my son and Lucy knew that I had separated from her over the next few days. I spent time online searching for the best lawyers and seeking a solution to my problem. That's when I came across one of these online communities where many men had experienced a similar fate to mine. I read about how they had planned their revenge and taken action against their cheating partners, including their anger towards the affair partner. I understand their feelings, but seeking revenge on Lucy is the last thing I would consider. I still love her deeply, and I would be lying if I said I could destroy her life in such a way. I don't want to, but I also cannot be with her again. Reconciliation is not an option for me. I'm not sure how I'll handle this or if I'll ever recover. I have a lot on my plate, including work, kids, assets, and more. I've scheduled an appointment with a lawyer for tomorrow and we'll see what advice they have to offer. I'll provide an update as soon as I make progress. Thanks, everyone, for all the support. Reading your comments helped me realize that I missed sharing some important information. Both Lucy and I were management consultants, but in our late 40s we both left our full-time jobs. Lucy finally got to pursue her long-standing passion for writing, while I started working as a business consultant for startups on my own. I'm an employed individual, but I don't have a fixed workplace. One of you mentioned concerns about Lucy potentially showing up at my workplace since I occasionally work from home or visit clients' offices. I consult for multiple clients simultaneously, so far Lucy hasn't been able to locate me. As I mentioned earlier, I'm approaching 60, and we've been planning our retirement for a long time. We've been saving up to purchase a beach house in the countryside for our retirement years with plans to buy it next year. We've even identified some properties and have been in discussions with property owners. Fortunately, we haven't made the purchase yet, otherwise it would have been a whole other ballgame. Lucy has been trying to contact me ever since I ghosted her. I met with the lawyer the day after my initial post, and he advised me to inform the children about the separation, given that they are adults. We also discussed the division of property, and I've decided to split it evenly between Lucy and myself. My retaliation wouldn't involve depriving Lucy of her wealth. She's entitled to half of our assets, and she's earned it. She's also entitled to the separation, which she has also earned. I get her. She might be willing to give up her claim to the wealth to reconcile and keep our family together while the divorce paperwork was being prepared. I met with my kids. I asked my son to discreetly bring his sister to a restaurant without revealing that I would be there. He agreed. My daughter's reaction was intense. The moment she saw me, she bombarded me with questions. One of her questions was whether I was cheating on Mom. She knew I had cut off contact with her. She was visibly upset, which pained me, but I had to remain strong for them and for what I was about to disclose. I was about to tell them, but I calmed her down and reassured her that I wasn't involved with anyone else. Then I told them the truth, but my son already knew about it and my daughter didn't know about my next steps. My daughter was really upset to find out that her mom had cheated on me. She'd been living. Lucy has been hugging me and apologizing for being angry with me for the past 15 days since I left the house. They both asked if I could consider giving our marriage another chance, but I told them I was pursuing a divorce. They both got really emotional and it was tough to see. It was tough, but they got it. They promised to stick by me through this rough patch. I told them I was splitting up with their mom, not them. My daughter said Lucy wasn't eating or sleeping well. She's been crying and pacing while trying to reach me nonstop. She even drove to some of my clients' offices to ask about me. They all said they hadn't seen me at work for 2 weeks. When our daughter asked her if something had happened between us, Lucy didn't answer. She just kept crying and moaning while locking herself in her room. I asked my daughter to stay home with her mom until our divorce is final. I can see their sadness slowly getting worse. When we talk about their mom, they get angry. I can tell they feel let down by her too. They've also lost someone. Our family is broken, and it's all because of her. I don't want them to hate their mom, so I tell them to support her. A few days later, Rick texted me about Lucy. He said that if I was planning to divorce her after finding out about her infidelity, he was willing to take her. I told him that Lucy was free to make her own choices. I blocked him after that. I'm sure he sent me a message to provoke me, but I felt the least angry towards him. I won't fall into his stalking tactics. I didn't marry or trust him. I did both with Lucy. He betrayed me and it's affected me deeply. I'm not insecure. He can have her if she wants. I'm least concerned about that. The divorce papers are supposed to be mailed today, and I'm still waiting for my daughter's call regarding Lucy's reaction. I'll provide an update once my divorce is finalized. In the meantime, I still have many matters to sort out, including my assets, retirement, and my children's well-being. Hello everyone. I know I haven't updated in a while, so I apologize. There's a lot going on. First of all, my divorce has been settled. When Lucy received the divorce papers, she didn't take it well. She became unhinged. Up until then, she'd been living in a bubble, thinking I was just angry and would come back to her once I was done being angry. That bubble burst when she received the papers. She insisted that my lawyer arrange a meeting with me, but my lawyer declined. He said she wanted half of all the assets, which was more than she deserved. She also said she didn't want any assets, only me. I told you I know her. She expressed her desire to meet me once before signing the divorce papers. She was confident in her abilities. She knew that if she had one FaceTime conversation with me, she could persuade me to reconsider the separation. She was right. If I had met her, I might have changed my mind. I still loved her and couldn't bear to see her deteriorate. But I couldn't set aside myself. She didn't respect me at all. She took me for granted and tore our family apart. I won't go into details about what happened, but I just want to say that I couldn't live like that. My daughter wanted to meet with me urgently. She told me that her mom's condition had worsened to the point where she had to be hospitalized. Lucy had fallen into a deep depression and was refusing any medication or supplements for her well-being. She had been admitted to the hospital and placed on a liquid diet because she had stopped eating altogether. I understand that many of you might think I'm heartless and selfish, but I'm not. At this point, I'm questioning whether I ever truly loved Lucy because I seemed indifferent to her declining health. My response is simple. Have you ever experienced betrayal? If not, you cannot fathom the pain I'm going through. To say that I loved and cherished my wife would be an understatement. I practically idolized her. I was her staunchest supporter and fan. We've been together for almost 3 decades. She's the mother of my children, Rick. He was partially right. It's really tough to find a woman like Lucy. She's smart, talented, empathetic, and has all the qualities you could want in a partner. So I made sure to treat her right. But what did she do in return? She struck me at my most vulnerable point. I never imagined in my wildest dreams that she would betray me, let alone with Rick. A few days after Lucy received the divorce papers, Nancy reached out to me. She asked about my well-being. When I told Nancy about Lucy, she didn't seem surprised. She said she knew why. Later, she called me. She asked how I found out about the affair. I told her Lucy had confessed. She said she was sorry and that she tried to warn Lucy about Rick. Nancy told her not to go out with him, but Lucy ignored her. Nancy said something that made me feel even better about my decision. She told me what happened. Nancy said that the incident was slightly different from what Lucy had told me. She said that she and Lucy were dancing when Rick joined them and started making advances towards Lucy. He whispered in her ear, which Lucy said was an apology from Rick. Nancy was uncomfortable with Rick's advances and tried to intervene, but she noticed that Lucy suddenly seemed to enjoy his company when Rick proposed going for a walk. Lucy looked to Nancy for guidance, but Nancy strongly opposed the idea because everyone knew how unsettling Rick could be. After a while, Lucy said she needed to go for a walk with Rick. Nancy wasn't too worried because Lucy had also said she wanted to go with him. Nancy was having a good time with other friends when she realized Lucy hadn't come back. She was worried about Lucy's safety, so she went out to look for them. Can you believe where she found them? They were in the changing room of the college swimming pool. But Nancy said Lucy said they were out on the lawn. Nancy revealed that she caught them in the act and they only stopped when Lucy spotted. Nancy approached them, so it wasn't Lucy's guilty conscience that stopped things. It was Nancy who interrupted them up until this point. I still had some pride in Lucy for owning up to her mistakes and confessing them to me promptly. It gave me a sense of closure despite her devastating betrayal. I believed her story that she got carried away because of alcohol and her conscience stopped her. However, it became clear that Lucy didn't cheat because she was drunk. She did it because she wanted to. The college swimming pool was at least a 15-minute walk from where we were. It was just a short walk from where we were, but the changing rooms were deep inside the facility. You don't just end up there accidentally. It was a deliberate choice on her part after sharing her side of the story. Nancy asked if I could see myself giving Lucy another chance to rebuild our relationship since Lucy had confessed and been completely honest about her mistakes. The thing is, Nancy didn't know that Lucy's version of the confession was different. I didn't clarify or respond to her question. Despite Lucy's miserable condition, she had lied to me. That's when I lost it. I still had respect for her, though. Meanwhile, my kids told me that Lucy was getting worse and was on the verge of self-harm. When I heard this, I called Nancy and told her about our previous conversation where I had been told a different story by Lucy. I asked her to visit Lucy and have an open conversation with her. Lucy had been keeping her secret locked up, which was causing her a lot of suffering. I also told Nancy to let Lucy know that I now knew the truth about that night and that I wasn't going to forgive her or take her back. It was in Lucy's best interest. I made it a priority to focus on her health because I knew she was intentionally harming herself in hopes of reconciliation. After all, I know her, don't I? Nancy paid Lucy a visit and provided me with an update. While Lucy has not fully recovered from her weakness and depression, my daughter mentioned that she's doing considerably better. Additionally, Lucy has gone ahead and signed the divorce papers, which was a significant relief for me. My plan is to wrap up my pending work and embark on a solo journey. I've decided to abandon my previous idea of settling down in one place because that I know it would drive me insane. I'll admit that I haven't handled the situation as perfectly as some folks in this community who faced similar circumstances, but I've done the best I could. Let's wait and see what the future holds. I'll keep you all updated. Hello everyone. I hope you're all doing well. It's been a year since my last update. I wish I could say time has flown by, but it hasn't felt that way for me. I spent a few months in a motel and later rented a condo for a few more months until my divorce was finalized. As for my work, I gradually transitioned as I had planned. I worked with clients remotely 100% of the time. Lucy and I had saved money for our retirement home, and she got 50% of it. I got the other 50%, which I split evenly between my 2 adult children. I don't need it, and they're responsible enough to put that money to good use. As for Lucy, she's still in therapy. Nancy keeps in touch with Lucy and checks in on me from time to time. She shared something surprising about Lucy that I never expected. Remember, this information comes from Nancy, who is still Nancy's been really supportive of Lucy, so take what she says with a grain of salt, but she has no reason to deceive me. Here's the thing. Despite my repeated claims that I know Lucy well, even after her infidelity, hearing this made me question whether I ever truly knew her. I always considered Lucy a strong woman with a resilient mind, but it seems that loneliness took a toll on her. Lucy began chatting with Rick, and he reciprocated by expressing his love for her until he learned about our divorce. Strangely, as soon as he found out, he started acting strangely and essentially ghosted her. Lucy was devastated to find that Rick had stopped communicating with her after she told him about the divorce. She reminded him of his claims of love and desire to be with her despite everything. It turned out that he was just flirting with Lucy for a casual physical relationship, which she got. He said that he couldn't commit to a marriage or any emotional relationship with Lucy because she's such a strong-willed woman. For those who know Lucy, it's hard to believe that she pleaded with Rick for a relationship. She couldn't have stooped lower. Everyone knew Rick wasn't a good guy. He revealed his true intentions by admitting that he was only interested in a physical relationship while Lucy sought emotional support, not just physical intimacy. He mentioned having a live-in partner and being content with that arrangement. It seems like all of his love and admiration were insincere when Lucy and Rick had a disagreement, and he ended it with a hurtful remark. He indirectly taunted Lucy by suggesting that he had succeeded in deceiving her. He claimed that he thought Lucy was intelligent, yet he managed to trick her, implying that he was the cleverer of the two. This caused her to sink deeper into depression, as she had lost everything by falling for his deceitful lies. The last update I got about Lucy was a couple of weeks ago. My daughter had been staying with her since I moved out of the house. She needed someone to help her cope with her depression. However, after living with her for a year, my daughter realized that she couldn't coexist with Lucy anymore. Lucy had become extremely difficult. She was once emotionally. Lucy has gone from resilient to insecure and erratic. She's always seeking the attention of others. She's also become delusional and disoriented. She's controlling and possessive. She calls and texts my kids nonstop. If they don't respond right away, she even insists that my son move in with her. She got married, but he turned her down. She's been pushing my daughter to stay home instead of going out with friends or taking vacations. My kids are adults now and they can't be restricted. Whenever my daughter tried to address Lucy's controlling behavior, Lucy would break down and express her fear of losing them, especially after I left. My kids told her they weren't going to abandon her and were trying to help her cope with her depression. They said that if she kept being so controlling, they might have to reconsider. This led to heated arguments with the kids, where she accused them of not supporting her during her most challenging times. This behavior is new to me, and my kids are just as confused by it. They had to confront her, explaining that her actions had disrupted our once happy and loving family. What was once a harmonious and safe family environment is now fractured and distorted. It was difficult for her to accept that her own kids held her responsible for 2 weeks ago. My daughter moved out. She told me that she tried to help Lucy, but she couldn't put her life on hold to care for her. I think my daughter made the right decision. She needs to move forward with her life, and Lucy needs to regain control of her own life. Some people might be happy to see their ex-partner struggle. My wife is going through a rough patch. I couldn't find happiness in this situation. I felt sorry for her. Her poor choices have led to a lot of suffering. I hope she can get back to her old self. She's a confident, strong woman who doesn't need to rely on people like Rick for emotional support. As for me, I've spent the past year living in 4 different countries. I've been exploring local cultures. I've had a great time trying different cuisines and immersing myself in new lifestyles. I was initially disappointed that my retirement plans had to change, but I found satisfaction in having embraced various cultures and lifestyles. I've had the privilege of meeting incredible people in different corners of the world. I haven't started a new relationship, and I'm not looking for one right now. I'm open to whatever the future brings, and I'll keep you posted if anything significant happens. Hello, everyone. I apologize for not providing updates over the past few years. Nothing much has happened in the last 2.5 years, except for my extensive travels to more than a dozen countries and my renewed passion. I started this thread to share my story about my cheating wife, but I didn't see the point in updating it with my travel experiences. However, there was something that prompted me to write this update last month. After 4 years, I had the chance to meet Lucy again. This reunion was because of my son's upcoming wedding. My son has found the love of his life and decided to tie the knot. 2 months before the wedding, he called me and said he wanted to introduce me to Lucy's parents. At first, I was a bit reluctant and suggested we meet at the wedding. But I realized it wasn't about me. It was about fulfilling my responsibilities as a father. The parents hosted a dinner for us a week before the wedding. I hadn't confirmed my attendance, but I decided to join. It was a bit tricky to see Lucy in this context, as I would have preferred to have one of us there. I knew I needed to be there for my son when I arrived. Lucy seemed surprised. She looked different, and her eyes showed that she'd gone through some changes. She greeted me with a polite smile, but I could tell she was feeling tense. Over the years, she'd always kept her hair long. Her hair was still thick even though we'd grown older. It seemed like she'd aged more than expected in the 4 years since we'd last seen each other. They seated us next to each other at the table, which made me think that our son hadn't told them that this would be our first encounter in years. It's worth noting that she didn't say anything in front of others, but as soon as we had a chance to talk privately, she commented that I appeared healthier. She seemed happier and healthier, which I attributed to cutting off all the toxicity from my life. This caught her off guard, and she glanced around to ensure no one overheard us. She asked if I was in a relationship, but I evaded the question, stating that my relationship status shouldn't concern her. During our conversation, I barely made eye contact, focusing my attention on everyone else. After dinner, I left. It was time to leave, so I said goodnight to everyone with hugs, but I just nodded at Lucy and told her to take care. I guess she wasn't expecting that, because she stood up when I was saying goodnight to everyone. It all happened so fast, so I don't think it was too awkward for the others. Surprisingly, my interaction with Lucy was pretty uneventful. She seemed either intimidated by me or too anxious to engage in more open conversation. I didn't think much about it after leaving the gathering and stepping outside. My son came with me and said I could spend the next few days with him, but I said no and told him I'd call. Then I drove to my hotel. I don't have a permanent residence. I'm mostly out of town, and when I'm in town I stay in a motel. After 26 years as a family man, it's been challenging to transition into a nomadic lifestyle. I've gotten used to this adventurous life and I'm really enjoying it. Aside from my family situation, I have another update. I now have a companion. During my visit to Tokyo 2 years ago, I met Ashleen, who is 52. She had recently come out of an abusive relationship and was enjoying her first solo trip. We connected while hiking up a mountain. We became friends because neither of us was looking for a romantic relationship. After our time in Tokyo, I was heading to South Korea while she was going to Thailand. We stayed in touch for the next 6 months and eventually decided to plan our trips together for the past year and a half. We've been traveling together to over 8 countries. We became travel companions and didn't rush into anything physical or emotional during the initial 2 months of our travels. We both took our time getting to know each other. We had a good talk and agreed from the start that marriage wasn't on the cards for now. We want to enjoy the experience of traveling and exploring different places. My children knew about Ashleen, but they didn't tell Lucy in case it made her depressed again. When I arrived at the hotel, I called my son to explain why I turned down his invitation to stay with him. I told him that Ashleen had come with me I couldn't leave her alone in town. I told him I really wanted Ashleen to come to the wedding. He was excited but also a bit worried about how Lucy would react. I said it was important for Ashleen to be at the wedding because she's my partner and should meet her family. My son added his sister and daughter to the call to get a second opinion, but mostly to discuss it among the 3 of us. She agreed with me that Ashleen should meet the family and the wedding. The wedding was a week away, so I used that time to give Ashleen a city tour since it was her first visit to Kentucky. When we arrived on the wedding day, I noticed Lucy was already staring at me. She seemed upset when she saw me holding hands with Ashleen at the wedding venue. I had already warned Ashleen about the possibility of Lucy's unpleasant behavior, but she assured me she could handle the situation. This was the first time I witnessed since our separation. Lucy had become increasingly controlling. She rushed toward us and grabbed my wrist, attempting to pull me aside. I firmly told her that I didn't want a private conversation with her. She questioned whether Ashleen was my girlfriend or if I planned to marry her. I replied that it shouldn't concern her and asked her to leave us alone because the guests were arriving and some were noticing Lucy's tears and anger. She insisted that she didn't care about anyone else and needed to resolve this matter one way or another. My daughter tried to calm her down, but Lucy refused to go with her. We pointed out that she was disrupting the wedding. She responded loudly that she didn't care at this point. My daughter, who is usually very gentle, turned into a force to be reckoned with. She didn't just lose her temper. She gave Lucy a stern talking to that I never expected from her. Our daughter spoke up in a calm but firm tone. She told her mother, "You were supposed to walk into the wedding on Dad's arm and be with Dad, but you chose to be with someone else. Either accept it and move on, or I'm going to make sure you're kicked out of the wedding before it even begins." I wanted to step in and help, but my daughter was handling it. She was even tougher on her mom than I could have been. She pointed her finger at Lucy and meant every word. I felt the tension in Lucy's grip on my wrist release. I saw Lucy's face quiver as she let go of me. She stared at me for 3 seconds. During that time, her expression shifted from anger to betrayal to sadness. She didn't say a word, but her face revealed a whirlwind of emotions. After this, Lucy walked away. Needless to say, she didn't. I told Ashleen that my daughter was sorry. She apologized, and then Ashleen hugged us. I told my daughter that she didn't need to apologize. I said that my daughter is strong, and I'm proud of her. I could see that my daughter was emotional when she said that it was on her dad. She said that we've suffered enough, and that she needs to move on or leave us alone. Lucy had made everyone's life miserable. Yet, she had expected sympathy and care from some friends for years. My kids haven't had a family home to gather in for special occasions. I take responsibility for that. During the wedding, Lucy got more and more upset that our kids were supportive of me. She either stood in a corner or seemed more excluded than a mother of the groom should be. She didn't even join us for the family photo. Nancy called me a few days ago and said Lucy took this as a blow. I told Nancy that my children and I are done with Lucy's drama. She can do as she pleases. I just want to enjoy the remaining years of my life in peace. I'm considering staying closer to my kids and providing them with a family home to gather in, even though they're grown up. This wedding made me realize that a new stage of life is approaching. I'm getting close to becoming a grandparent, but I won't be sharing that with Lucy. I'm okay with that, We'll see if Ashleen is willing when the time comes. Thanks to some of you for the advice and sharing your experiences. Stay loyal and true to your spouses. If not for yourselves or your partners, do it for your children. Life is good and there's always more to enjoy. Take care.